Everybody, and welcome back to the channel. We're going to be continuing to talk about the DCU projects, movies, and TV shows that they've announced. So next up is Swamp Thing. Go check out the original video talking about the DCU and talking about the DCU Part 2, and the video talking about the Brave and the Bold, and now we're going to be talking about Swamp Thing. So the whole reason we're talking about each project individually is because of the fact that the original video talking about the DCU and talking about the DCU Part 2 were getting way too long, and so he just decided that he would split up everything. He would release those first two parts, and then every project after starting the Brave and the Bold would be talked about in a separate video. So anyways, continuing on with Swamp Thing. It says, a gothic horror film that explores the dark origins of Swamp Thing. Now, I'm not, it's a similar thing to Clayface, excuse me. I'm not into horror like that. Yes, I watch slashers, but any other genre, I don't like being scared. I don't think there's anybody who would, but there are tons and tons of fans of the horror genre. So mostly for me, I don't like being scared, but I can watch slashers. It's kind of weird to explain it, but anyways, continuing on. In December 2022, James Mangold was reported to be interested in working with Gunn and Safran on a DCU project. When the pair unveiled the first projects on their DCU slate in January 2023, they included a new Swamp Thing film. Gunn said it would take specific inspiration from Alan Moore's 1984 to the next year's The Saga of the Swamp Thing comic book run. He knows nothing about this run, so I don't really know a lot about Swamp Thing. He's not really a character that I'm that interested in, although the concept is interesting. I believe you have a scientist, Alec Holland or something. I would have to go back and check that. But anyways, continuing on here, and then you have Swamp Thing. So it's kind of like a Hulk situation, but not exactly, because Hulk is the same person. He turns into Bruce Banner. No, Bruce Banner can turn into the Hulk, but Swamp Thing and Alec Holland are separate people from each other, but I would have to go back and check, but it's kind of like the Hulk, but not really. So people who are obviously more knowledgeable, botching words, more knowledgeable about the character of Swamp Thing will know. But anyways, after the announcement, Mangold posted a picture of Swamp Thing on social media. He was confirmed to be in negotiations to write and direct the film the next day, but was not expected to start work on it until he had completed the films Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which came out in 2023, and A Complete Unknown, which came out in 2024, last year. Mangold's involvement was confirmed that April when he had begun writing. He was simultaneously working on the planned Star Wars film and was unsure which project would move forward first. Gunn described Swamp Thing as a passion project for Mangold. Alright, and next, the last stuff they wrote here is, despite being tonally darker than other DCU projects, Gunn and Safran intend for Swamp Thing to be interconnected with the rest of the DCU. Alright, so already I'm not on board with this being a horror movie. So that's already a strike against the movie. Another strike is I think James Mangold directing the movie. I think that's I think that's good news, because Logan, man, that movie is excellent. I think most people would agree. That is a very good movie. It was really good. So that's one of the main reasons why this project, I think, has more potential than something like Clayface, in his opinion. Because James Mangold, knowing that he directed Logan and he directed something that good, that makes him think that this movie has more of a chance to be a better movie, because James Mangold is writing and directing it. So yeah, So he, so so he's writing and directing, so that's cool. He's not expected to start work on it because he has other projects to do. Because he's also simultaneously working on a planned Star Wars film, and unsure which project would move forward first. That's really unfortunate, but because it's a character that he's not too familiar with, I guess it's fine. It's also, this is another one of those projects that I'm also like, out of all the projects you could do, why would you choose Swamp Thing? Like, I understand we shouldn't like compare to Marvel, but Marvel at least waited until Phase 2 before they started experimenting with these different characters, unknown characters, more say. He's not. I guess Swamp Thing is not unknown, but he's like, he's not as popular as some of the bigger heroes, I would say. At least that's what it seems like to me. Maybe people who are more knowledgeable will say no, but this is another project that I think this. So this is another excuse me, I'm struggling to talk. This is another project that I think they should have waited until at least Chapter 2 to do this movie. Like, I just don't think this is a project that you should be doing in the first chapter. Because like Marvel, in their second phase, you got Guardians of the Galaxy, and then you got Ant-Man. Those are two characters who are very they were more like, I'm like, especially the Guardians of the Galaxy, more unknown, but because of James Gunn's work on that, they're now more well known, and those movies, especially the first and third movies, are very good. Now with Swamp Thing, I'm hoping because James Mangold is writing and directing this, that this movie could be very good, but it doesn't change the fact that I just think that like, this should be in Chapter 2, because Marvel, Marvel, I guess in the first phase, they can afford to do risky things like that, because they had to have, well, actually, I just kind of, because like, the characters they started with weren't as popular as they are today. Like, for example, like Iron Man, and like Thor, for example. They weren't as well known, but nowadays, because of the actors who have portrayed them, they are now like, just especially Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, who did such a great job in that role. But anyways, we're talking about them taking, I guess Iron Man was sort of unknown, like people knew about him, but he was kind of like, like not as popular as like the Hulk or Spider-Man, for example, or something like that. So yeah, with Swamp Thing, there's just several projects in here that are announced that shouldn't be in this first phase. I know some people are like, that are like, are happy that they're not doing what Marvel did, which is picking the more traditional projects that you would expect. So Superman, Aquaman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Wonder Woman, Batman. And I understand that, but I think that just works. I think it works leading up to the first Justice League movie. I just think that works. I really do. It worked for Marvel, and it was working for a long time until now. It's only now they've started not to do as well. But I think it could easily work for DC as well. Like, you can, if you still want to do the jumping into a universe that already has a bunch of heroes, that's all fine. That's all well and good. But you can still do a traditional lineup. In Phase 2, you can do things like you can like also get some sequels in there for the movies you did in the first chapter. But also, this is where if the movies are successful to get a Chapter 2, then in Phase 2 you can start experimenting. In Chapter 2, excuse me, you can start experimenting a little bit. You can do things like the Authority, like Clayface, like Swamp Thing, like Sergeant Rock. Like, these are the projects you can start doing, because you've already proven you've gotten some trust from the audience. So now, if the script, who you cast, the story, if these are good, people are going to people are hopefully going to show up and be interested in the character, more interested in the character, because you've done a good job with the things he just mentioned. But yeah, so I think also Gunn described Swamp Thing as a passion project for Mangold. I think that's good because he is really passionate about it. It's a project that he really wants to put all his energy and effort into to make it as good as possible. So that's good to hear. Yeah. This is just a project that I think the only thing that's making him like have some kind of interest in it is because James Mangold was directing it, and that's pretty much it. I don't really know a lot about the character and the comic book run that the movie's going to be based on. So yeah, I hope it's good. Just like with all these projects, I hope they're good. I hope they make money, and we can continue to get more projects. But this is another project that, in his personal opinion, he wouldn't have included in this first chapter, because it's a character that it's more that is known, but not as well known as some of the heavy hitters. So yeah, this is a movie that I personally would have waited, would have had it, would have put, since they were planning the whole DC universe out, they could have had written this project down for sure, and like gone back to it in chapter 2 if the first chapter is successful. But in this first chapter, this is not the time that he thinks to be experimenting. Even though he knows, he assumes that most people, don't want them to do a traditional thing, but I wanted them to, because I think it makes the most sense. For a new universe, you want to do what you know will work, or what is most likely to work, in his opinion. So yeah, he hopes it's good, like the other DCU projects, and he hopes it's going to be interesting to see what the movie turns out to be. James Mangold directing it, that's the biggest thing about it that is like, you know what, I think he could make this a very good movie. So yeah, that's it pretty much. So he hopes it's good, and yeah, so there is another thing he has to say, but let him just look back first about Swamp Thing, and come back. The noise in the background, but he clicked on the Alan Moore Swamp Thing run, and so he's reading a little bit about it, and it says it says, as Swamp Thing was heading for cancellation due to low sales, DC editorial agreed to give Alan Moore, at the time a relatively unknown writer in America, whose previous work included several stories for 2000 AD, Warrior, and Marvel UK, free reign to revamp the title and the character as he saw fit. Moore reconfigured the Swamp Thing's origin to make him a true monster, as opposed to a human transformed into a monster. So, alright. So yeah, it's not really like the Hulk. It was before he, as they say, reconfigured it. So that's interesting. So yeah, we just wanted to make that, wanted to clear up that mistake. So continuing on here, I know you guys have read this, or probably have read this, I don't really know, but if you have, then this is not really new information to you, but it is to him. So continuing from where he left off, in his first issue, he swept aside the supporting cast Pascoe had introduced in his year-and-a-half run as writer, and brought the Sunderland Corporation, a villainous group, out to gain the secrets of Alec Holland's research to the forefront as they hunted down the Swamp Thing and ended him in a hail of bullets, which is in quotation marks, by the way. Now, this is interesting, this next part, at least to him, and it's a fact, and it's something he's learning for the very first time right now. But the Saga of the Swamp Thing, Volume 2, February 1984, the anatomy lesson signaled a change in the character's mythos by having an obscure supervillain, the Floronic Man, Jason Woodrue, perform an autopsy on the Swamp Thing's body and discover it was only superficially human, its organs little more than crude, non-fictional, non-functional, vegetable-based imitations of their human counterparts, indicating that the Swamp Thing can never have been human. The Swamp Thing was not Alec Holland, but only believed it to be so. Holland had indeed passed away in the fire, and the swamp vegetation had absorbed his memories and his consciousness and memories and created a new sentient being that believed itself to be Alec Holland. This year's turned out to be way more longer because it was originally about the movie, but now that I'm looking at some about what the run was about, I'm now finding this stuff a bit more interesting. So that is interesting. He finds it interesting that the villain would perform an autopsy on something that isn't human. So that's really just odd and like, huh? Like, that thing, like, from the photo up here, that does not look human. That, like, how do you perform an autopsy on that? Anyways, continuing on here. The thing about it was not Alec Holland, and that he never, that's just like, but Swamp Thing thought it was Alec Holland, but it couldn't have been because the real Alec Holland passed away in a fire and absorbed his consciousness and memories and created a new sentient being that believed itself to be Alec Holland. That's really interesting. So the real guy actually passes away, and then he, Swamp Thing, believes himself to be the real Alec Holland, even though he's not. He's just Swamp Thing. But that's very interesting in his opinion. He finds that really interesting. Yeah. So he's gonna wrap this up. So very quickly, gonna read the last of this. The Swamp Thing would never be human again because he was never human to start with. Woodward also concluded that despite the autopsy, the Swamp Thing was still alive and in a deep coma due to the bullet wounds and imprisonment in cold storage. Very interesting. He's going to continue reading the rest of this on his own, but for the movie, he's mainly interested because James Mangold is directing, but reading a little bit more about the run itself as he's going to continue reading a little bit about what happens in the run. It seems very interesting, and the concept is very interesting as well of the character. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Go check out the other videos, like and subscribe. Follow on Instagram and Twitter if you want to. Bye.